Welcome back to the Foundation series. Over the last 10 videos, we have built the entire conceptual architecture of Kabbalah: Ein Sof, Zimzum, the Sefirot, the worlds, the soul, Tikkun. You now have the framework, the skeleton, the map. But the Zohar is not a textbook. It's not an encyclopedia of mystical concepts you can index and file away. The Zohar is a living text, and studying it, actually sitting with it, opening it, reading it, is a fundamentally different experience from learning about it. Most people learn about the Zohar, but never learn from it, and there's a vast difference between those two things. So this video is practical. I want to tell you what the Zohar actually is as a book, its physical structure, its layers, its style, how to approach it if you've never opened it, what to expect when you do, and what will happen inside you if you stay with it long enough. Let's start with what you're actually looking at when you pick up the Zohar. The Zohar is not a single book. It's a collection, a library, really, of mystical commentary, narrative, discourse, and revelation, primarily structured around the weekly Torah portions. The main body of the Zohar follows the Parashah, the sections of the Torah read each week in the synagogue, and offers mystical interpretation of the verses. But it doesn't interpret the way a normal commentary does. It doesn't explain what happened historically. It reads every word, every letter, every grammatical form in the Torah as a code, a living signal pointing to the inner dynamics of the Sefirot, the worlds, and the relationship between God and creation. When the Torah says, "And God said, let there be light," a conventional commentary might discuss the physics of creation or the literally structure of Genesis. The Zohar reads that verse as describing the emergence of Chokmah from Keter. The light is not photons, it is the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light, taking its first form within the supernal triad. Every verse operates on multiple levels simultaneously, and the Zohar is the key to the deepest one. The language of the Zohar is Aramaic, not Hebrew. Aramaic. This is significant. Aramaic was the spoken language of the common people in ancient Israel. Hebrew was the holy tongue, the language of Torah, of prayer, of the priests. By writing the Zohar in Aramaic, the text is making a statement. This wisdom belongs to everyone. It is not locked behind the gates of the scholarly elite. It speaks in the language of the street, even while revealing the secrets of heaven. Now, the structure. If you pick up a complete set of the Zohar, you'll find it's organized into several distinct sections. Let me walk you through the main ones so you know what you're holding. The first and largest section is the Zohar on the Torah, commentary following the weekly portions from Bereshit through Devarim. This is the core, This is where most of the fundamental teachings live. If you're going to start anywhere, you start here. Then there's the Zohar Chadash, the new Zohar, which contains additional material on the Torah portions and other books of the Bible, particularly Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, and Ruth. This material was found in manuscripts after the main body was already compiled. There are the Tikkunei Zohar, the 70 rectifications, which is a separate work offering 70 different mystical interpretations of the first word of the Torah, Bereshit. The Tikkunei Zohar is dense, technical. It's where much of the systematic Kabbalistic structure, including the full articulation of the four worlds, gets its most detailed treatment. It's not where you start, but it's where you eventually go deep. There's the Idra Rabba, the Great Assembly, and the Idra Zuta, the Small Assembly. These are among the most sacred sections of the entire Zohar. They describe gatherings of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his companions, where the deepest secrets of the Godhead are revealed. The configuration of the divine face, the supernal triad in its most intimate detail. The Idra Rabba is in Parashat Nazo. The Idra Zuta is in Parashat Ha'azinu, and it describes the passing of Rabbi Shimon himself. These sections are considered the inner sanctum of the Zohar. There's the Sifra DiTzniuta, the Book of Concealment, which is the most cryptic, most compressed section of the entire Zohar. 6 chapters, almost no explanation, pure encoded revelation. The Idra Rabba is essentially a commentary on the Sifra DiTzniuta. It takes those compressed seeds and unpacks them through dialogue. You don't start with the Sifra DiTzniuta, you arrive at it after years of study, but knowing it exists, knowing that the Zohar contains a text so concentrated that the rest of the Zohar is commentary on it, gives you a sense of the depth of what you're dealing with. And woven throughout all of these sections are stories, parables, Rabbi Shimon and his companions walking on the road and encountering a donkey driver who turns out to be a hidden master. Children who speak words of Torah that silence the sages. An old man in a cave who reveals teachings that have been sealed since Sinai. The Zohar is not just doctrine, it's literature. It tells its truth through narrative, through character, through drama. And those stories are not decoration. They are transmission vehicles. The story carries the teaching into a part of you that pure doctrine cannot reach. So, how do you actually approach this? How do you begin? First, and I cannot stress this enough, do not try to understand the Zohar on the first pass. The Zohar is not designed to be understood the way a textbook is understood. It is designed to be absorbed. The first time you read a passage of Zohar, you will understand maybe 10% of it, maybe less. And that's correct. That's how it's supposed to work. The Zohar operates on multiple levels simultaneously. PaRDeS, the 4 levels of Torah interpretation. Peshat, the surface meaning. Remes, the hint. Derash, the allegorical meaning. Sod, the secret. Every passage of Zohar contains all 4, and when you first read it, you'll catch whatever level your soul is ready to receive. 6 months later, you read the same passage, and a completely different layer opens. A year later, another. The Zohar doesn't change, you change, and as you change, the text reveals itself differently. Second, read it aloud. Even if you're reading a translation and don't understand the Aramaic, read the Aramaic aloud. The Zohar itself teaches that the sounds of its words carry a spiritual charge independent of comprehension. The letters are vessels. The vowels are light. When your mouth forms the words, something is happening in the upper worlds, whether your mind tracks it or not. This is not metaphor. This is the Zohar's own teaching about itself. Third, study it in small amounts with great depth. Do not try to race through volumes. 1 paragraph, 1 teaching. Sit with it. Let it sit with you. The Zohar rewards slowness. It punishes haste. A single page of Zohar studied with intention, with prayer, with an open heart, is worth more than 100 pages skimmed for information. You are not collecting data. You are building a relationship with a living text. And fourth, study it in connection with the weekly Torah portion. This is how the Zohar was designed to be engaged. Each week, the Jewish world reads a portion of the Torah. The Zohar comments on that portion. If you align your study of the Zohar with the Parashah, if you read what the Zohar says about the portion that the entire community is reading that week, you enter a current, a river of collective spiritual attention that amplifies everything you receive. Now, what will actually happen when you study Zohar consistently? The first thing is confusion. Accept it. Welcome it. The Zohar is intentionally obscure in places. It hides its treasures behind strange imagery, behind apparent contradictions, behind passages that seem to say one thing and mean another. This is by design. The confusion is the lock, and your persistence is the key. If you stay, if you don't demand that it makes sense on your schedule, the lock opens. But it opens on its own terms, not yours. The second thing is dreams. The Zohar itself teaches that when a person studies its words, the text continues to work on them during sleep. Don't be surprised if your dream life changes, becomes more vivid, more symbolic, more layered. The Zohar is activating levels of neshama that operate while the conscious mind is quiet. Let it work. The third thing is inner refinement. You will notice gradually, without forcing it, that certain behaviors start falling away. Certain speech patterns, certain habits of thought, not through guilt, not through effort, through exposure. The Zohar emits a frequency, and when you spend enough time in that frequency, things that are incompatible with it simply dissolve. The Zohar calls this the purification of the vessel. You don't scrub yourself clean. You stand in the light long enough that the darkness has nowhere to hide. And the fourth thing, eventually, after enough time, is recognition. You begin to see the Sefirot operating in your daily life. You begin to feel the worlds. You begin to know, not believe, know that the structure you've been studying is not an abstraction. It is the actual architecture of reality, and you are inside it, always have been. The Zohar was hidden for centuries. The tradition says it was sealed because the world was not ready. And there is a teaching that in the final generations, the generations closest to the end of the exile, the Zohar would be revealed, and its study would become not just permitted, but necessary. That the very act of studying Zohar accelerates the Tikkun, hastens the return of the Shekinah, brings the end of exile closer. You are in those generations. The Zohar is open. The text is available. The only question is whether you'll sit down and begin. This is the final video in the Foundation series. Everything from here forward, every teaching, every commentary, every deep dive into the Zohar's passages will build on what we have laid down across these 11 videos. You have the map. You have the mission. Now, the real study begins. Shalom.